and it shows that it's recording. So the first thing I want to do is find out if you all have questions. So if you have questions, will you please let me know what your questions are? Yes, ma'am. Joy, do I see you with a question?
I feel like I'm in class. This is great.
Well, good.
Right. So it's about the task 3. So should I wait for those questions, or should I just ask them?
Yes, wait for those questions, because
All right.
I'm going to go over what's got to be in them. Then if you still have questions, I will take them after that.
Okay.
All right. Did someone else have a question? Okay, Sharon?
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out how to unmute my audio. Sorry.
Okay, not a problem.
So I got a very lengthy email about some of the things I need to revise on my task 1 this evening. I am behind on my task 2 as well, and I know I would need to do the revisions before I can turn it into the Dropbox. And then with task 2, it is overwhelming, I will say, because I've never really, had any issues in the first semester with my work. So with that being said, with all the revisions that I have to do, and I still need to get with Dr. Tillman to kind of figure out exactly what I need to do. As far as the time and me turning in my work, do I go ahead and just try to focus on task 2 and deal with task 1 at a later time, or I'm just trying to organize myself here?
All right, what I'm wanting you to do is get your drafts done.
Okay.
And I want you to get those done as quickly as possible, because you can go back and make those revisions when you have time. That's the reason, if you notice on the list of the dates on Blackboard, I only give you the date that I want the draft.
Okay.
Because I know that you got to deal with anything that I write, anything that Dr. Tillman writes, and anything that your peer reviewer does. So that takes a little bit of time, because each one of us is different at the way we do things. Now, you're going to see that Dr. Tillman and I both read your things very thoroughly. And so some of you have probably got things about grammar, and some of you have probably got things about sentence structure, failure to have a noun or a verb, and it's a phrase. I look for those kinds of things. Dr. Tillman goes into depth looking to make sure that you have all the content that you need. So between us, we cover pretty much the APA, we cover what's in the rubric, we cover making sure that it's done extremely well. Now let me tell you the reason that I pay as much attention to grammar and sentence structure as I do. And I'll still miss stuff. And that's the reason I usually will put, please proofread once again when you've not been working on it, or get an English major to proofread it. The reason for that is one of the things that occurred when I was a superintendent is I got this letter from a parent, and she had gone through and highlighted every mistake the principal had written in a letter that he sent home to all of the students in the school. And she said, my grammar is better than this, and I didn't go to college. So I think we fail to realize that we're being judged on everything we do. We're being judged on every piece of paper that goes out from your school. And you all may not have a parent like that, but instead of going to the school and telling the school, they send it to me as the superintendent and made sure that I read it. So, I had the kind of relationship with my principal. I always picked up the phone and I said, okay, you need to know this. This is exactly what came in today. And, please start checking your work and get somebody to proofread in case there were mistakes. We all make them. So that's one of the reasons I want you as administrators to start realizing, even though you're not there yet, that people are judging you on everything you do. And so that's one of the reasons that maybe Dr. Tillman and I are a little more picky than what you're used to, because we're not teaching an English course. But at the same time, the work that you put on task stream should be the very, very best work that you do in your entire life for up to this point. You'll do more later on. So that's why we try to catch it before it goes to task stream. Don't feel offended by it. Don't feel upset when we find things. That's our job. And our job is to make you all look professional. And so we take it to heart. And I have not finished with all of the task ones. I usually do task one, and then I do task two. I try to do them all at one time. I haven't finished with all of them because I actually do take the time to read them. And I'm not a fast reader particularly. I will skim for content, and then for some reason, and I've been this way even since when I was even when I was a central office superintendent. Mistakes jump at me, and I see them, whether or not you would see it or not. And one of the things I was guilty of, and we all are guilty of, is mistakes that we make. We don't see them because we worked on it so hard. And so that's why your peer reviewer really needs to put on their teacher hat. And you don't need to be offended by things that they say. You know, you need to really look at what they're saying and make sure you feel good about what you're doing, and that you're doing the very best job and the best work you can do. So does that help a little bit? You know, don't feel bad about anything that Dr. Tillman or I tell you. We just want your work to be flawless by the time it goes on task stream. And I don't know whether anybody realizes the purpose of trying to get your best work on task stream or not. I don't know whether that's actually been explained to you. Task stream is what is DPI's way of making sure that your work is what it's supposed to be. If you think about Southern Association, if many of you have been through Southern Association reviews throughout the years, and you know that when they come in to look at what you say you're doing, that's what they're looking for, to see if you are doing what you've written that you're going to do. So they're judging you based on what you set up that you were going to do. Well, DPI has to approve all of the programs that in North Carolina that the colleges offer. So when they allowed the portfolio to become the licensure agent, that also means that should they ever have the personnel to do it, I'm not sure that they do now, but should they ever have the personnel to do it, that when it comes time for renewal of the cycle at the state level, they could go to Gardner-Webb and they could say, I want to see 3 out of each one of this group. I want to see their portfolio and see if the work they've done is actually what they said in the description that it was going to be. And so, you know, you want at that point in time, because you're wanting the university to succeed. You're wanting the university to make sure that they do exactly what they have said they were going to do, so that DPI will let you do that and continue to do it. So that's the reason we try to make sure that you get everything just as perfect as possible. So does that help? All right, there's one other thing I need to make you aware of. Tiffany Merritt is not going to continue in 603. So if she was in your group, I think you still have enough, but I will double check to stay and keep the work going. There is one other I am trying to find out what's happening, and that's Lauren Taylor. So if she was in your group, it is very possible she will not be in the course either, because she hasn't completed out the enrollment verification and she hasn't done any of the assignments. So, but Tiffany withdrew today. So we know that that is correct. She's not going to continue with 603. And then with Lauren, we're not real sure what's going on there.
Dr. Todd, sorry, I had one more question.
Yes. Joy.
So on our discussion, on the discussion board, should we post it as a thread on top of our teammates threads or separate threads to make sure that you received it?
just do it as a separate thread. Your draft should be the first thread. Okay.
Got it.
So just post it as a separate thread.
Thank you.
And that's really your beginning point. Okay. All right. Anything else? And that's a good question.
I have a question, Dr. Todd.
Okay.
As far as the peer reviews, when are the peer reviews due?
They are due just as soon as you can get them finished, after the drafts have been set out or posted.
And so if we're trying to submit our paper and we haven't received our peer review, is it okay to go ahead and submit without having the peer review?
It is, because I don't want to hold you back on something where somebody is behind.
Okay.
So if you are, but I would also contact that person and say, I really need your peer review, because remember, we're only getting one peer review this time.
Right.
So that means someone is not staying up and they're not doing what they're supposed to do. And even if they have not got their draft done, if they're supposed to review you, they should go ahead and do that review. So I would try, first of all, by contacting them. And if they aren't, things happen. So go ahead and submit based on what Dr. Tillman and I say.
Okay. Thank you.
The other thing is, I'm only about halfway through each of the classes with the submissions. So for task 1. So I plan to work on that and try to get that finished as soon as I possibly can. But I really do look for the content, and I go back to the rubric every time, because I want to make sure that I'm seeing what the evaluators are going to see. And I know Dr. Tillman does that. She spends a lot of time doing that. All right, any other questions? All right, I wrote this next section for clarification because I realized, and some of you have your faces covered. If you would please just join us so that we can see you all, that would be wonderful. One of the things that I want to make sure, someone sent me an email and said, okay, I want to make sure I know when to submit things, because they had gotten an email or during one, I think it was during one of Dr. Tillman's classes, someone in the group said we're not supposed to submit anything for evaluation. Well, that isn't correct. So I think you're getting two things mixed up. I think you're getting mixed up when you submit to TaskStream, and I think you're getting the competency folio mixed up. So let me try to share my screen, and if I can, I'll go back and review those two places where you're to post stuff. So we'll see if we can get to the right screen. And all right, can you see my screen now? Yes? Okay. All right, if you will look, well, let's see. Let me see if I can move it. If you will look over here, it says, and I think I went down too far. It says discussion board, and one of your groups does not have that. The other one does, but it's listed in each one of the weeks. Notice I've got OMA Task 3 for peer review. That means your draft should be here. And then you will also submit your copy of your peer review somewhere, either in the group or here. I don't usually see the group information that goes back and forth. It just comes to mind if it's in the grading screen. So this is your draft that goes here. So this is where you post your first draft. Now you can also post what you do for your peer review for the other person to view. So the draft of the task goes here as soon as you get it finished. Now, over here under assignment Dropbox, for you to get credit for it, okay, why is it not opening? There we go. For you to get credit for that peer review, it has to go here. OMA Task 1 peer review for evaluation. That means, yes, I evaluate it. I give you points for it. It goes in your grade. It does not mean it's ready for TaskStream. This is just in Blackboard. Now, the other thing is once you make all your revisions, you go to whichever task you're working for and put it for evaluation. Again, it's under assignment Dropbox, and it's dealing with the task that you've revised. So hopefully by the time it gets here, there are no issues with it and we won't find other things. However, I will tell you that I usually find at least one or two things, and I will point those out, and then all you've got to do is make those changes, put it aside until you're ready to put it together. All right, any questions about that? Then the final thing is once you put your entire piece together, and you have the cover sheet, your abstract, task 1, 2, 3, 4, your references, any appendices that you have, and you feel confident all the revisions are made and you feel very good about it, then it goes under OMA Final Evidence Narrative Turnitin Check. So once you post it there, it comes back to me. It will give me a Turnitin score. And each one of the artifacts that you do has a different Turnitin score that is allowed. So Dr. Lamb will give us what that is. And I usually will respond, your Turnitin score for task 1 was such and such, good job. Or it was a little high, and I check and see what is the issue that you're having with it. So does that help you in understanding the process for Blackboard? Now, once you finish the Turnitin check, I will send you an email, or not an email, I will post it under your comments. And I will put, this looks really good, or there's a few changes that need to be made. Make these changes and submit to Task Stream for evaluation. That's once the entire thing is put together. And so when you put it on Task Stream, you submit it for evaluation. Now, I'm going to stop sharing because I don't think I have anything that shows there about the next part. The competency folio, that is one where each semester you are putting evidences in your competency folio. That occurs each semester. And you do not submit that for evaluation until your final semester in the program. So that's the one that you do not submit for evaluation. You submit it for comments to your clinical coach too, and then that person will review it and make comments, and then you go ahead and do the next set of evidences and the next set of evidences, and then just keep going. So that's that, and then finally right at the very end is when you submit for evaluation for that. So does that help clear everything up? Okay, all right. Another thing that I know has been occurring because some of you have been getting emails from Dr. Crawford as well as Dr. Tillman. Dr. Tillman is your clinical coach too. And hopefully they have gotten it straightened out. But if you still keep getting emails or notifications, please let us know, and we'll let Dr. Lamb know that something's still not straightened out. All right. Anything else about those issues at this point in time? All right. Let's look at what's on your agenda for the OMA Task 3. Now, what I did was I took the description and then I took the rubric, and the first part is what's in your description. In some places it's worded exactly like the description. In other places it's paraphrased a little bit. But you are to work with your building administrator, and your purpose is to analyze the academic schedule for maximum compliance with a defined set of necessary and or required circumstances and or conditions in the school. Now that's a lot of words. What does that really tell you? What's it telling you you're supposed to be looking at?
Look at the schedule that we already currently have, make sure it's in compliance.
And what are you looking at to find out whether it is in compliance?
Probably like the duty free, and then the time for ELA and math, and then special
learners.
That's right. You're looking at the laws and the policies of your state and your county, and you're trying to make sure that everything that has to be done is done, as far as planning time, as far as duty-free lunch, as far as, you know, all of those kinds of things that are part of the schedule. You also look for things in your school improvement team that have been identified as your issues. For example, if reading is an issue school-wide, are you going to break up the reading time, or are you going to put that early in the morning for everybody, unless they're dealing with a reading specialist or someone to come in to your classroom while you're doing with a special group? You're going to put the maximum learning time wherever your problem is that your school is dealing with. And for many schools, it's reading. For many, it's math. So you want to focus on what your school improvement plan has identified as the issue that you're really targeting for the year. I know when I was working, I used to get really frustrated because one year we would meet the goals for whatever it was. We would change the goals the next year, and we didn't meet the one for the previous year. And I thought, okay, we had it fixed. Why can't we just not continue doing what we were doing and then fix something else? But it doesn't seem to work that way. It seems to be whatever you focus on is what will improve. So you need to look back and see about that and make sure that you are scheduling things without interruptions at the time that they really need to improve in whatever area you have chosen as your focus.
So if we have like some read to achieve students in classrooms, and you know, like we give them like the 120 minutes uninterrupted time, like include things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And now there are some things, because there's usually not enough personnel going around, sometimes you can't make the optimal schedule, because you may have an EC teacher that comes into the classroom, and the children that they're visiting in the classroom where you're both team teaching, their issue may be something like reading, and you may have to schedule it later in the day just in order for you to have the right teacher at the right time. So you can't always do what is best. You have to sometimes do what will work. And there is a difference. And so that's one of the things that when you have to put that administrator hat on, is you have to look at what the central office is assigning you and is allowing you to have in your school. And then are you making the best use of the ones in your school? And so all of that plays a part when you're looking at the schedule. And so what it says for prompt 1, you are to develop an analysis of your existing school schedule. It is to include, but not be limited to, assessment of the current scheduling procedures, strengths, and areas for improvement. So if I were going to be writing this task, I would probably identify it as prompt 1, and I would probably have a subheading that said analysis of the existing school schedule. And then I would probably have another little subheading, strengths and areas for improvement, current schedule, strengths, and areas for improvement. And then the next one is alignment with any related school improvement team findings. So that's where you're going to look back at your school improvement plan. And if you are on the school improvement team, then you know what they're talking about and see if that's been incorporated. And actually, you would not have to have subheadings in all of these little areas. They could just be paragraphs under existing school schedule, strengths and areas of improvement, or analysis of existing school schedule, and then you could just do each one of these as a paragraph. Then you are to look at the legal requirements. Are all of the legal requirements for planning time and for teacher collaboration and for instruction, are those all present? You're also looking to see if there's an alignment with the needs of diverse and exceptional populations by providing accommodations for specific group and individual needs. Now, let me talk just a minute about that. One of the things that I used to tell my teachers when I was the superintendent is, don't schedule testing modifications unless you're giving the children those same modifications day after day. Because we would have many of these testing modifications and the children wouldn't use them. And when I say children, I'm talking about from 3rd grade through high school. They wouldn't use them, and it was a waste of everybody's time. And yet you had to have these little small groups where you pulled them out. Now, they didn't always listen to me, but the point behind all of that is, if you're not going to make those modifications on a daily basis, why are you doing it for testing? You're just trying to do something that's not really helping a whole lot. I also, when I was a superintendent, I would have my central office, and I went as well to help with the testing. And so I would actually have some of the small groups, and I would see that those children weren't using the time. They'd finish halfway through the regular time. And yes, I understand that some of them need to be away from others because they're distracting. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about whether they actually use the extended time or they actually use whatever modification you've identified. Technically, if you're giving them a modification for testing, you're supposed to be doing it each week when you teach them and doing the same modification. So make sure that you have those alignments present. The next one is there any evidence of input from the faculty? What's the procedure at your school? And are they actually participating by giving information to the principal before they leave at the end of the year? Now, realize that when you become the principal, you can't always take what people want, because you may not be given the people, and it just may not work out. Your PE teacher may not be there but a certain length of time, and you have to schedule around when they are given to you. But has there been some input from the teachers? And then, do you use the findings as a basis for revising the current schedule? So once you have been working with the schedule and the teachers say, okay, this isn't working real good, do they use that information as a part of revising it for the next year? So that's what goes in prompt 1. Now, prompt 2 is to develop a new schedule or a draft of your current schedule that's new, that justifies the changes, and you're to present that to the school administration, or you have an or, not an and, or the school improvement team. And your proposal should be graphic, and you should do it in some type of meeting, or you can use presentation technology. But the project is to conclude with a proposal to adopt the new schedule or modification of the current one. The narrative should include the decision or the feedback that is provided to you. So that is what the prompt says. Once you get the analysis of the current schedule and you get input from the faculty about what needs to be changed for another year, then you revise the schedule, or you create a new schedule, and then you present that to your school administrator or your school improvement team. And then you write how it was received.
Dr. Todd, can I ask a question real quick?
Yes.
I heard you say that after we get input from the faculty, so are you suggesting that we do like a survey prior to writing Task 3 on the OMA, getting feedback from our staff about our current schedule and any parts of it that aren't working for particular grade levels?
I would make sure your principal is okay with that, and that your principal knows what you're doing, because you don't want to give your faculty a false hope. And if your principal says, I have that information, I will give it to you and I will share it with you, or if your instructional facilitator has that information, then there's no point in recreating and trying to get more information. Probably there's going to be feedback already in your school at this time of the year. So I would first of all look and see what I could find, and I would talk very openly with my principal and make sure that they're okay with getting the feedback. A survey would be fine if they're okay with it, but if they're not okay with it, you get the information the best way that you can from other people that are open to you. Also, I will defer to Dr. Tillman. She may have other suggestions, but I just really think you're a graduate student. You're not the principal, and you don't want to create more problems for your principal. Most of you, your principal's thrilled you're in the program, and they're not going to have a problem with it. But I have run across a few where the principals were not always as open in sharing things. So you will just have to assess based on the situation you're in. Does that help?
So if we do that and our principals do just say, don't worry about it, I have that information, and they kind of mention that information to you without any evidence to back it, are we able to still use that and say, in an interview with our principal,
Yes.
this is what we were told?
Yes.
Okay.
You would say in an interview with the principal, or it very well may be the principal's got a file and the principal says, here is my file. This is the information teachers have asked for. However, I'm going to tell you that most likely we can't do this because I don't have the personnel to do it or whatever. So yes, you can use interviews with your principal or your instructional facilitator or your instructional coach, whatever your school system calls the additional people in your school. Okay. Other questions? Yes, Joy.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. So you said legal requirements for teacher planning and instruction. Are there laws for collaboration, or is it more like best practices? Are there laws surrounding when teachers collaborate?
There are laws about planning time.
So not necessarily collaboration.
I don't think there's any on collaboration. That's more of a best practice. This is the way that we'd like to see you do that.
Right.
But you do have to provide them time for planning.
Right.
So,
Okay.
and that's where a lot of the collaboration occurs. Now, there may have been some suggestions in some of the more recent laws that suggest the collaboration, but I'm not sure about that. That would be a question to ask Dr. Tillman as well. But I know the planning time, and if you look at the list from Dr. Lamb, it points out specific laws that are sort of connected to what you're having to deal with, but he doesn't give you much information about it. He just lists the laws. And some of you have been working with this, so it may be that you want to add some information here that you've already found. Anybody want to share something that they've already found? Sabrina?
I just have an additional question. So should we also mention people in our building who do not have a planning and they're being compensated to teach an extra block because of the lack of personnel?
You mention it, yes. But the clarification is, and this is where you would have to check with your central office, would be if they are being paid extra, they have made an agreement to do this.
Right.
And so therefore they would be exempt from those regulations. So you have to go into finding out more about it. But yes, that would be part of your analysis. And I can remember when I was a principal of a pre-K through 8th grade school, we had a group of teachers who came in one block that they were shared with 2 other schools, and they were a traveling team, and they would come in for a block in the morning, then they would be at another school in the middle of the day and another school at the end of the day. So I had to schedule all of my middle school activities around when they were at my school, and the other principals had to do the same thing. So you get into those kinds of situations. And also a lot of times art and music are only provided to your school a certain day depending on the size of your school, and you may have the same thing with health and PE. So you know, all of those things play a part in what actually happens with your schedule. Sometimes you come up with wonderful ideas, and yes, it would be great if you could implement them, but the reality of the funding, it just really, really is not going to allow you to do what would be the best idea.
I had one follow-up about what you just said.
Yes, ma'am.
So in order to get accomplished, does the administration have to adopt the idea, or can they just consider it?
The way the rubric reads, all of the above, which I've listed, have to be present. In addition, you have to provide evidence your school administration plans. They don't have to do it. They have to plan to adopt your changes.
So it could be intent, like this is a good idea, but not now.
Or it could be, this is a good idea, providing money is available, I will implement this. Provided personnel are available, I will implement this. Okay?
Thank you.
So an email from a principal would be fine for you to count as your evidence. Just make sure in your narrative that you point that out.
Dr. Tillman, go ahead, Kyra.
Okay, I have another question too. Thank you, Carrie. So what if after looking at your school schedule, you find that it is pretty in line with most of the needs? You know, they have a committee that's already doing things, and you're finding it does fit all the laws. You don't have to do too many changes. How do we go about
You would write that in your narrative after reviewing all of the laws and the procedures and everything. My school schedule is in very good shape. And then if you found one thing that you felt needed to be changed, you would say the one thing that I would request that they consider is, and sometimes that it may be provided additional personnel are provided. You know, it may be that you'd like to have your media more frequently to go to the library, or you might have more help with technology on a week. You know, there will be something that you will feel once you've done all your analysis that there's something that would make things better. But hopefully when you do find it, you're going to find your schedules are in very good shape. Most of your principals really try to work hard and get what the teachers need. So I would be surprised if you found a lot of real issues, as I call them, because they're going to try to do everything possible to be legal and to get everything covered. So that's a good question. All right, Carrie, did you have a question?
That was one of my questions, Kyra, so thank you. My other one is I'm noticing that these headings under prompt 1, I feel like I've already addressed all of these in the OMA Task 1. I've already talked about schedules, laws, all of this. So am I just maybe copy pasting some of it back into it? Because Dr. Tillman she had a very, very specific outline that covered all of these things that we had to address in the first task.
Well, I will tell you that at least some of your papers are really long. And I have felt like that you've got information that you could use again in there that really didn't have to be in that first one. And sometimes I've made that comment and sometimes I haven't. But when I read one of the first ones that was really, really long, I think I made a statement such as, there's a lot of information here that I'm not sure it's all needed in task 1. But yes, if you've already dealt with each one of those, you copy and paste. This whole piece should not be something that you're fearful of or that you think you have to recreate. If you've done it in another task, you just go and copy and paste, and you may have to rephrase to make it fit, but that's what you do. All right, Sharon.
Yes, ma'am. So at the high school level, we have one master schedule, and we have schedules for every single department at our school. So am I to focus on everything, or just the master schedule, or every single department? Is that what I'm reviewing?
Master schedule.
Okay.
Now, I say that because the master schedule should take into account where kids are each period of the day. So it should account for all of the time in the daytime, right, that they're at school. So that would be what I think they're talking about. Now, that would be a question I would also ask of Dr. Tillman. I don't think you've got the time to deal with each departments. I mean, high schools are a bear to begin with, and it's so departmentalized that I just don't think you've got the time to deal with that. We're not trying to write a dissertation. We're just trying to get the information such that you cover what's in the rubric. And then, you know, if you've already addressed it somewhere, copy and paste. And again, if you have to rephrase to make it fit together, or you have to add a sentence here or a sentence there, that's what you do. All right, any other question?
I'm so sorry. I guess I have one more question. So we're going to compile the OMA into one large document, correct?
Yes.
So then that means that as they repeat, I mean, it's okay to literally have the same bits of information in the same document from one piece to the next.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
Now, what that will do, and you may want to look at this, that will increase your Turnitin score if they keep seeing that over and over and over. I think that even when you include the directions, I think that increases the Turnitin scores part of the time. And I can't figure out why on some it does and some it doesn't. But if we wind up that there's a really high Turnitin score, then I will let you know, and then we'll figure out what to do from there. But yes, you can do that. If it's the same thing, yes, that should be fine. Okay, any other question?
I do. I have another question. As I was just looking over the information and thinking about everything that we're talking about, it comes to mind that my role at school, I've been like an instructional coach, a technology coach. I'm wearing a hat of curriculum and instruction administrator who's no longer with us, even though I'm not the administrator. It's crazy. And as I'm thinking about it, like I have been a part through this entire calendar year of helping make some decisions that brought about changes to our master schedule on the high school level. For example, we implemented a power lunch, a 1 hour power lunch in the middle of the day. And all of that was brand new this year that I, played a part in helping bring about. Can I include that information in this task?
I
Or
would.
from right now moving forward?
No, I would, because you're looking at your whole year.
Okay.
Yes, I would include that.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, look very carefully what the rubric says. To be proficient, you have to have, and this is a word I have trouble with defining, substantial analysis and exceptional analysis. So exactly what are those? But I didn't write this. But that is one of the things when I was an evaluator that we actually would talk about, okay, what does this mean? And they had to come to an answer with that. But anyway, you're looking at the assessment of the current scheduling procedure strengths and needs areas for improvement. So is that there? Alignment with any school improvement team findings, is that present? Alignment with legal requirements for ongoing teacher collaborative planning and instruction, is that present? Alignment with needs of diverse and exceptional populations by providing accommodations for specific groups and individual needs of the students in your school. Evidences of input from your faculty. Utilization of findings as the basis for revising the current schedule, and a revised schedule recommended as part of your task. If you will forgive me, my dog is making a lot of noise, so okay, my husband's gonna go get him. He wants out, and he is letting us know that, so I apologize. But anyway, that's what, if those things are there and you've actually spent some time talking about them, then you're going to be proficient. And basically the only difference between being accomplished and being proficient was that all of them had to be addressed and very thoroughly, And then there's some evidence that your administration plans to adopt some of your recommendations. And so, like I said, that can be an email, it can be something like that, some kind of notification. So does any more questions about that? Yes, Karen.
Okay, one more. It sounds like for this one, we won't have as many references or necessarily research that's backing everything because it's just what's happening in our own school buildings.
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, your references will be the connections back to the laws.
Right.
And the information. And your textbook also refers to some laws. It doesn't give you what they are. I mean, it gives you the names of them, but it doesn't have them printed, but it will help you identify where you look. Those would be the only ones that you would have references. And then a lot of it's what's going to be going on in your school. All right. Any other questions about that? Okay.
I'm sorry, one real quick. Just I was flipped over to look at it real fast. Prompt 1 is the narrative of all of this.
Yes.
When you look at prompt 2, the bullets under the prompt 2 are the same things from prompt 1. So is prompt 2 just the actual new schedule or new draft that would be presented to administration, or is prompt 2 involving a narrative as well?
Prompt 2 is primarily your schedule.
The new schedule.
The new schedule or the revised schedule. Now the part that you have to do is the part about presenting it graphically or using some type of presentation technology to give it to your principal.
Right, that's what I was asking. Is that prompt 2 what we create for our principal rather than a narrative?
Yes, and you would probably, and again, I'll defer to Dr. Tillman on this, you would probably do introductory remarks as, you know, when I did the analysis, this is what we found.
Right.
And in this schedule, it accommodates those things.
Okay.
And it's the information that I presented to the staff or to the principal or the school improvement team, and this is what they're discussing and talking.
So kind of a simple narrative surrounding your presentation.
Simple. Yes.
Okay.
Concise is good too. Okay. Anything else? All right. The next thing, if you've been a social studies teacher, you know this really well, but sometimes we all have to be reminded of it. And your book does this. So this is just a little bit of information in our few remaining minutes that I want to bring to your attention. Your book brings out 4 different types of law. Constitutional law, common law, statutory law, and administrative law. Constitution law is the basic source of law for either the federal or state governments, and it specifies the structure of the government. It outlines the powers and the duties of the officers and subdivisions. And so you can read that, and you can read that in your section, in your textbook, but I just tried to narrow it down. Then it talks about common law. And it says, when confronted with a problem that cannot be solved by reference to statutory law, a court decides the case according to common law. And English common law is where it comes from, and it's defined as principles, procedures, and roles of actions enforced by courts that are based on history or custom, with modifications as required by circumstances and conditions over time. It's not automatic, and it must be applied by a court. Then statutory law is laws that's passed by a legislative body. They may alter the common law by adding to, deleting from, or eliminating the law. And then administrative law are regulations established by administrative agencies. Now, after telling you all of that, there's a reason I did that. One of the things that I was talking to one of our local legislators for the state one day, and I told him, I said, I don't know where this is coming from, but I said, it appears to be coming from the legislature. He said, Dr. Todd, the legislature did not do this, because he was in the House of Representatives. He said, we did not do this. He said, we sent it over to the North Carolina State Board of Education, and this is their regulations. So all of that to tell you this is the laws are created at the national level and the state level. Many times the laws will not be specific and they will defer them over to another agency. A lot of that depends on how much trust there is between the State Board of Education and the legislative body. So your guess is as good as mine as to how that's going these days. But some things that come to your school that you think are required by law are required by the state board based on things the legislators have told them. So it sometimes gets confusing as to who's really behind what. And that's the reason that you look at the laws and the policies. What happens when your school system gets a policy revision or they pass a policy? First of all, they'll take the information from the law that may have been passed. Then they will take any information that comes down from DPI that may be more specific and tell you what you have to do. And then they will turn all of that information into a local policy. So it sometimes gets real frustrating. And another thing to realize is, and I'm going to, it's on here a little bit, but not a lot. I just went over the general functions. The biggest function of the state as far as education go is education is looked at as the state's rights and the state's duty. Now, it has gotten a little more complicated in the last few years because when No Child Left Behind came along and when Public Law 94-142B passed, and you had to deal with specific things in order to get that money from the feds, one of the pieces that happened is the federal government got involved in education, whether they chose to be or not, because the states had to do what the feds said if they got the extra money. Well, there's not many school systems that I'm aware of that can do without that federal money, because the federal money comes to the school systems in pockets. And when I say pockets, I'm thinking about specific programs. It comes for Title I. It comes for the exceptional children. It comes for school food service, and it comes for career and technical education. Those are the big parts of where the federal money comes from. Now, when you think about the programs in your school that are offered in those areas and the things that occur, while it's not a huge portion of the local school system's money, they can't afford to do without it because they don't have the money to provide for the teaching children with special needs without that federal money. They also don't have the money to keep the cost of the meals at the schools low without that federal money that comes to the school. So when they pass some laws, it sets in things in place that for a school system or a state to get their money, they have to put certain things in place. And so that's where you will find that the state takes the information the feds send them. They then send it out to the local school systems and say, this is what you've got to do if you want this pot of money. This is what you would be allotted, provided you give us the information that we need to spend this money. And so it gets really complicated, but overall, it is the state's responsibility to educate children. And then it has gotten a little bit more confused. And truthfully, the biggest portion of the money that comes to every school system comes from the state. Now, the school systems that have a lot of industry and businesses, then you all get right much from the local. But a lot of us who worked in smaller school systems that were very rural, we didn't get very much for local from the locals other than what they had to provide. And what is generally thought of by county commissioners. They believe that it's their responsibility to look after the buildings. And many of the county commissioners in rural systems do not believe that they should be paying supplements. And so your superintendents in areas like that may have a really difficult time trying to get you a supplement. We worked the whole time that I was there trying to get supplements up, and I think we finally got it to about 5%. I don't know where it is now in the county that I used to work in, but we would do 0.5% a year, and that's all we could get. And they didn't like giving it to us at all because they did not see that as their role. They saw their role was to take care of the buildings and provide the spaces and to the capital outlay and anything that was related to the fuel and the power and the water and those kind of things. That's what they saw as their duty. And that's actually the way they're trained when they go to commissioners' meetings. So sometimes when you get into these administrative roles, you wind up dealing with things that you thought, okay, where is this coming from? Well, a lot of it's how they are trained at their training meetings when they go. And you also realize that you are constantly having people go in and out of positions, and you have different ones almost every week or every year or two. I think maybe every two years or so, however many years there are the elections. So, you know, that's when you get new people, they have to be trained. So it behooves you to know what people are being trained and what's being told to them, so that you can at least understand where they're coming from. And a lot of times, if you understand and you can work within those parameters, you get more than what you expect. But a lot of times, if you go in a militant style, they're going to ruffle their feathers and you're not going to get hardly anything. So you are much better off to go in a very calm manner and ask for things and share rather than try to be real autocratic. All right, Sharon, do you have your hand raised? All right, let me see in the chats if there's anything I've missed. All right, the exact dates for task 2 and task 3, I would hope that by the end of, by the middle of this week, you could have task 2. By the end of the week, you'd have task 3, and then that gets us ongoing so that we'll be up to par. Again, you probably have a lot of it already done, so just copy and paste. I am not going to be real strict on whether you get task 3 completed by Sunday night or not. The reason for that is I've given you weeks 5 and 6 in case you got behind for something. So I've got the assignments for 1, 2, 3, and 4. I give you 5 to start putting it together and 6 to get it. Week 6 is when your first OMA is due. Then we have time to get the others done that we have to. One of the reasons it's really important that we get the first, all of this done, the OMA and the skip, and start with the CAP is because when summer session starts, you only have 10 weeks. You have 15 in the spring and the fall. You have 10 weeks. And so anything we can get done ahead of time, we need to do that. Okay. Should we post our task as a group, or should we post them in separate things? I think I've answered that one. A new semester today. Okay, this is a good question. Is anyone in South Carolina found the state laws and regulations on the required amount of planning time duty-free lunch? Anybody found that? Okay. Now here is North Carolina. This has many of the laws that you need. Article 9 for EC and Article 20 has information about duty-free lunch. Okay. Now I think, was it this week or last week, there was also some information that Dr. Lamb provided that's connected to North Carolina. So is there anything else? Because I think we're just about out of time. We've got 1 minute. So anybody have anything else for the good of the group?
No, just if we could get a little bit of help finding that information for South Carolina, if anybody happens to find it, if you don't mind sharing, because I've read through every regulation, every law I can find on the State Department website, and I cannot find it anywhere.
What would be the best place to put that? Because my thought is the same. If someone finds it, could we share it?
Oh,
But
yes, you can share it. What about
where do
asking?
you guys want to put it?
What about asking your principal?
That's my next step.
Well, me too. And they just kind of keep saying, well, you know, it's the law. And I'm like, okay, which law and where can I find it?
I was referred to our district website, and I have spent so much time on that website, and I don't see anything about planning
Okay.
under board policies.
Well, and it may be that South Carolina doesn't have that. And Kira said she Googled North Carolina Board of Education policies. Try looking at South Carolina Board of Education policies. That's a good point. Because a lot of this is Board of Education policies that comes from them rather than state laws. And that was the reason for my story about when I was talking to our local House of Representatives member, and he said, Barbara, we did not pass that law, or Dr. Todd, I think is what he called me. He said, we did not pass that law. He said, that was passed by the Board of Education at the state level. So, yeah, so try there. That's a very good suggestion. And I agree with you that some of Dr. Lamb's information was a little bit old. For part of the things, I did go and try to look for the calendar information. I did go and try to give you the new stuff. But some of that is a little bit old, I think. So, all right, anything else? Do you have anything? Oh, one last thing. Dr. Lamb and Dr. Stedman are having a Zoom session for 603 students on Thursday evening at 6. He's planning to talk about the OMA, and I posted at the bottom of your agenda the time and the meeting ID. So feel free to join him. I think that probably Dr. Tillman and I have gone over a lot of the same information, but you'll probably feel better about knowing that we're all telling you the same thing, and we're telling you to use what you can from your APSL and your APTEL, and then to try to just change as you need by making a sentence or two addition. So feel free to join that, but I know that you all are probably feeling overwhelmed with so many Zoom meetings. So if you can't, then don't worry about it. Hopefully they will record it and post it just like I do these. All right, any other questions for tonight? Well, thank you all for joining, and I really appreciate you working as hard as you can, and I am reading, and hopefully I will have all of task 1 done by the next 2 or 3 days. And then I usually tell you what to do, and then when you get feedback from the 2 of us and your peer reviewer, if the peer reviewer, like I said, contact them and see if they'll go ahead and do the peer review. If they won't, then submit it from what we have suggested. Okay? All right. Y'all have a great week. Goodbye.